I'm going to turn things over to Ellen. So thank you very much for your time. And it looks like, Ellen, I think you're muted.
I beg your pardon. Thank you, Adam. I appreciate that warm introduction. Let me share my slide for the team. You should be seeing my cover slide, Civility in the Workplace. This is what we're doing today for SCORE. I'm a regular SCORE volunteer. I own my own business, and I teach monthly for SCORE. I have HR classes, and I have mostly soft skills. I do civility and supervisor training. I'd love for you to look me up on SCORE's website and find my trainings monthly, and hopefully you find this helpful, and this gives you a little bit more insight and information into your workplace and potentially personal. A little bit more about me, what Adam was talking about. The interesting thing I find about SCORE, they've been doing this. They offer free webinars across the world, I believe. I don't get paid for this, of course. I'm volunteering my time in order to help folks on this call get better. And I hope if you do find it in your capability to donate, it helps to keep the SCORE machine working. I don't see any of that, of course. I just give my time up. But it's a really helpful tool for people that are able to attend these free webinars. So a little bit about what we're going to do today. It's a very interesting concept, this civility teaching. I shouldn't have to be here. If I polled each of you individually and I asked you generally, do you believe that you need civility training? Chances are you'd say no. You'd say, I could use a reminder maybe. The reality is incivility costs billions of dollars a year in the workplace. You'll see statistics I'm going to show you that talk about losing 30 minutes at a time of productivity time at the workplace. So if you're owning your own business or you're a supervisor, every act of incivility costs you 30 minutes of productivity. It's really nuts. And if you're an employee and you're going home and you're not happy with work, a lot of times it's because you're around people that are uncivil. So we're going to talk a lot about that, talking about being polite and kind, some things that we should know about that we may not. I've got over 50 bullets of tools here that can help you take that with you. These are the things we're going to cover. I've got 4 sections of training today, and each section has a natural break where we'll take some of your questions. So feel free to throw them into the chat, or I think Adam wants you to put in the Q&A. But either way, Adam can read off the questions and I'll address what I can. If it's an out of scope question or something that's a little bit too direct or personal, we'll take it offline. Part of one of the things I've offered to SCORE attendees is a conversation offline at no charge to talk more about something that might be going on with you or your workplace to help you through something. So today we're going to talk about the concept of civility, its importance to the company, which of course relates back to you. We're going to talk about effective communication and professional behavior, which is really about workplace etiquette. We're going to talk about conflict resolution, and we're going to talk more specifically about negative conflict. There's a lot of positive conflict that I love. I think that's great for growing and working together, but the negative conflict is what we want to attack. And I'll give you some tools for your toolbox on how to deal with that. And then a go forward plan. Sometimes we have a lot of questions in the trainings, and the go forward plan is more of a summary and overview for you. I have a slide at the very end with a QR code that you can contact me at my business, and I'll make sure you get a copy of the presentation, along, of course, with the recording that SCORE will send out. And then you also will have the opportunity to follow me on LinkedIn, and we can interact in other ways, especially if you find this helpful. We'll have ways that we can interact and help get you better. The one thing I want you to take away from this opening part of the presentation is I want you to walk away with tools for your toolbox. You may hear 49 things today that you've heard before that are great reminders. Okay, thanks, Alan, appreciate it. But that 1 out of 50 thing is an additional tool for your toolbox. In HR for over 30 years, in counseling employees and managers and helping people get through these relational issues at work, what you find is that if your only tool is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. So I want you to have multiple tools. Some of these tools you can use every day, like a hammer or a screwdriver or a wrench. Other tools you may use once a week or even once a month. There are some tools you may use once a year. And just like at home in your toolbox, there may be some tools you use once. That's okay. If you need that tool, you need that tool. So hopefully I'll give you some things for your toolbox that you can carry with you throughout the rest of your career, even into today in your workplace. So first thing we're going to talk about is defining civility. And as we get into this, and I give you some statistics, one of the most interesting things for me when I research this, and before every training, I do a new level of research to see if anything new is coming across my desk. I still to this day cannot find anything that helps me quantify what civility looks like as far as a benefit to the company. There's a boatload of stuff that statistically and academically and metric wise incivility, and you're going to see that there's going to be cost to your business for incivility. So the idea of civility is avoiding incivility and avoiding the costs of incivility. So cost avoidance is a real thing. So what is civility? I'll tell you what it's not. This is the best example I can give you for incivility. If this picture looks familiar to you, this is back in January. It was the Green Bay Packers and Philadelphia Eagles, and a good amount of incivility occurs at ball games or sports events, I should say, soccer across the world, football, baseball, also parking lots and driving with road rage. But this is one that's just a great example of the costs of incivility. So this guy we can see his face, he's yelling at a young lady. And I have two daughters. If I were there hearing the things, even just reading about the things that this man was saying to a young lady, drove me to such a feeling, such an emotion. How would I feel if those were my daughters and he has kids and he's yelling at this girl like she's just some no-name nobody? It was really awful. But here's what happens. January 12th, this foul-mouthed fan, now this guy is banned from all games, rude behavior, bad-mouthing a fan on the other team. His name is everywhere. There are over 900,000 hits on Google from just this title. Imagine if you expanded that to this guy's name or the situation. So Ryan Caldwell is now labeled. And on top of this guy having a name that over 900,000 millions, I'm sure, know about by now, his company is named too. This is his boss and the name of his company, which, by the way, is a diversity and inclusion company, a consulting firm that promotes diversity and inclusion, where this older man is yelling at this younger woman, calling her awful, misogynistic and rude and crude names and words at a sporting event. Why? 4 causes of incivility. And these all showed up in this one scene, but also show up in a lot of other places. There's a lack of self-restraint, anonymity, stress, pursuit of individualism. You get lost in a 60,000 person arena or 100,000, even a 20,000 person arena. Sometimes you're just going to the local store, you're in Publix, and you lose yourself, and there's anonymity there, but there's not, of course. You've got cameras, you've got costs, you've got all these other awarenesses. The cost of incivility can be very far reaching. And here's where it starts. And what we're going to do today, as we go through these slides and through this discussion, is we're going to talk about how to get in front of some of this stuff. But before we do that, I've got to lay the groundwork for you to see just how bad it really is. And when I poll all of you and you say, yeah, I'm good, or I would never do that, a lot of people say that and they do it. The I would never, you don't know until you're in that situation. If you've never yelled at someone, ever cursed under your breath, and you know the Google and the chat hear everything that you say, so you got to be careful about how you act. Where does it originate? Sometimes we want to control other people. Sometimes we want to be recognized. Sometimes we're looking for attention. Negative attention is still attention. You ever have a child that just throws a tantrum? Sometimes they're trying to talk, they don't have the words, but what about an older child that has the words? Sometimes it's just for attention. Sometimes they're not getting what they need. We as adults do that too. There's also boundaries that we don't know. Somebody's told us about that. And it could be as simple as you're having a bad day. Maybe you're taking it out on someone, not on purpose, but you don't know how to control yourself. I'm going to try to give you some tools for that today as well. I found 9 ways that we show incivility. I am sure if we sat in this call together, if we open this line up, and if you have other ways that you've seen incivility, or if you've shown it and now you're recognizing some ways that you show incivility, pop it in the chat. I'd love to have some conversation about what that looks like and how to get in front of it. These are just some of the things that I come top of my head about how you show incivility. Sometimes incivility is as simple as failing to acknowledge another person's presence. And I have a slide for that later. You don't say good morning, or you don't respond with a you're welcome to a thank you, or you don't hold the door for someone. What about gossiping? Do we gossip regularly? Unfortunately, I bet we do. We don't even know we do, or sometimes we know we do and we want to do it. So gossiping is not civil either. It can also be intentional or unintentional. You could be going out of your way. Not often. Most people don't go out of their way to make someone else's day bad, but sometimes we do. Sometimes we don't like what somebody did to us, so we are intentionally uncivil to them because they were uncivil to us first. Two wrongs don't make a right, but we do it anyway. Sometimes we're unintentionally uncivil. I didn't know that you were behind me, so I didn't hold the door for you, but you're mad at me for not holding the door. Well, I'm sorry for that. I didn't do it on purpose. Those types of things are levels of incivility that we deal with every day, either on the giving or receiving end, that I want you to be aware of and hopefully get in front of as you continue to learn this stuff. There are some general costs of incivility, and I have a couple of slides that will show you specifics. Employee turnover, company productivity. If you own an organization, you know, I had a conversation recently with a client, and we have an employee that is seemingly intentionally, although that's hard to get your head around, but coming into work late, leaving early, not working a full day, not completing all their paperwork. And this person's been counseled and coached. And there's a level of incivility that goes along with a lack of respect and a lack of doing their job. That's productivity. That will create turnover at some point. If this employee doesn't shape up, we're going to have to figure out have this person find a job that's more suited to their capabilities, which means turnover. Then there's costs. I told you before about people staying home, and there's health costs. You see a doctor because of your ulcer or because you're having heart palpitations or your stomach's upset. All kinds of things can come from incivility. Here's a study from 20 years ago. Pearson and Perath did a study, and it talks about if there's incivility at work, half the time, half the people that experience incivility will lose work time, half will contemplate changing jobs. You ever have to coach somebody who is talking to you about, I'm not really feeling like this job's for me anymore? You're taking time now as an owner or as a leader to talk to an employee. If you're the employee that feels like they're not vibing with the organization, the culture isn't correct. Usually culture has to do with uncivil acts that aren't handled by the organization. So I want you to start looking at that. Look at some of the other facts in blue. 1/4 of the respondents that felt like they were treated uncivilly will intentionally cut back work efforts. What does that mean to getting a project done on time or working through a scenario at work where you can help someone improve or be better? What does that mean to you as the employee about getting your next raise? You ever have you ever heard somebody on that conversation? I work just as hard as that other person. Do you? Because you're coming in late and leaving early. Yeah, but I'm getting the same amount of work done. Are you? That one project still isn't complete. So many times we have an inflated sense of self that we don't even know is going. And I studied this 30-something years ago in my psychology classes that take its way to this HR approach that hopefully you can take away also. Before you, and I'm going to cover this later too, before you start, and I know that we're all on some level of Zoom, and most of us aren't in a room with other people, although some of you may be. If you find yourself, whether really, like actually, or even in your head, elbowing the person next to you, saying, hey, he just said that was for you. You see, you need to step it up. I want you to take a moment. And before you start looking at the person next to you, take a look at yourself in the mirror. Most of the time, we think that someone else should be hearing this. We should be hearing it first. So here's your first tool for your toolbox. If you start nudging somebody next to you, take a second and look in the mirror and just think about self-awareness. Is this something that I have to deal with, or I should deal with, or I can take from this, before you start showing that to the other person? That's one of the things I really want you to take from this. If you think 20 years ago is too long ago, how about 3 months ago? This is a SHRM study, Society for Human Resource Management, which is where I have my certification in learning and training from. They do studies on civility for the last 2 years, especially. They've been doing this huge study and training on civility. I started mine longer ago than that, but I do take some information from them. Look at some of these stats I highlighted for you. U.S. workers who experienced or witnessed workplace incivility. So you just experienced it or witnessed it. You lost an average of 37 minutes of productivity per act of incivility. 37 minutes. using the average hourly rate of pay across the country of 32.54, that means that that time that your employee or that I just lost resulted in a company loss of $20 per incivil act. Every act of incivility at your company is $20. Let's say you think Sherm inflated the numbers. It can't be that much. It's half that. You just paid $10 for an act of incivility at your workplace. Let's say you say that's too much and you half that. You just paid $5 for an act of incivility. Do you want to pay $5 for every act of incivility that occurs at your workplace? I don't want to pay a penny. I want to avoid it. I don't want my staff at all to act uncivil. Now, certainly it happens, but how do we get in front of it? Those who reported experiencing or witnessing acts of incivility took an average of 1.7 days off from work in the past month. How much PTO do you have? How much paid time off do you give? How much time is 1.7 days adding up to that creates a lack of productivity? And that's I'm not even there. Maybe I'm seeing a doctor that costs medical. Think about all these things that incivility. This is why we want to get in front of this and handle it. Over 1/4 of U.S. workers are likely to leave their jobs in 2025, this year alone, due to experiencing or witnessing incivility. Of all the other things we have to deal with our employees, moving, poor production, growth initiatives, learning initiatives, there are so many things that we can't control. One of the things, I'm going to teach you this today too. You want to call this a second tool. I want you to learn to control your controllables. We're going to teach you that. I'm going to try to teach you that as a recipient of incivility, as well as someone who's experiencing incivility as a witness or at your workplace as a leader. I want you to learn how to handle these things. Control your controllables. There are ways to get in front of incivility at your workplace. If you are a leader in an organization, if you are an owner of a company, even if you're the employee that's experiencing incivility, 26% of the time, more than 1/4 of the time, someone is likely to leave their job because of something that we could have gotten in front of and controlled. Think about that. That's something that if we can own that and control that, that will be better for us. U.S. organizations collectively lose $2 billion per day. I think I said per year earlier, $2 billion per day in reduced productivity and absenteeism due to incivility. These are stats. And again, even if you think these are inflated, this is way too much. I can't believe this. Sherm just wants to put stats out there that make them look better. Okay, 10% of this, 25% of this, whatever it is that you think would be a better, realer number, it's still too much. So let's see how we can get in front of it. Why be civil? Employee satisfaction and engagement, increase customer return, being nice to someone, smiling. How many muscles in the face does it take to smile? There are different numbers. I've heard 72. How many muscles to frown? 16. Whatever the numbers are, it's much. I'm sorry, the other way around. Forgive me. It takes so many fewer muscles in the face to smile than it does to frown. So think about, why would you frown instead of smile? So these are the things that we can do. If we just smile, less muscles, it's easier to do. But think about how to improve your company branding. All of these things from civility. Again, we could sit on this call and map out and brainstorm a whole bunch of different things that fit in. You can come up with these and add them to the chat if you get a chance. I'd love to have a conversation about it. Why be civil? There's no escaping others. When one big world, what are we at? 7-something billion people on this planet, if not over 8 by now. So we have to share space. I don't think there's any job in all of my years of human resources and all of my years of mapping jobs and figuring out compensation tools and just job definitions and descriptions, I have yet to come across a job where there is no interaction with someone else. There may be out there, but even you working alone at home by yourself with your earbuds and you're interacting with other people, whether you're driving to a job or going to the grocery store or getting online or something, there's always interaction. You can't escape other people. I also believe in a certain degree of karma. If you're nice to people, they'll be nice to you. And if you're not nice to people and you can experience a lack of civility on your own too. And just in general, it's the right thing to do. I put a list of things that I think simple acts of civility can be. I would love for you to think about your ad. When I go to Publix, I put the card away. Now, most of us, when I'm in a room teaching this live, I say, how many of you put the card away? Almost everybody puts the hand up, of course, because nobody wants to not put the card away. It's always the right thing to do, even though people are paid to do that. What about if you start complaining about someone else not putting their card away? Do you just look at it and complain? Are you uncivil by gossiping? Or do you take a second to put the other person's card away too? There are things you can do that help to promote and create civility. You can clean up a mess you made. You go to the restroom, you wash your hands around the sink, you've got some water, take a paper towel and wipe down the sink. Or you can, if you spill something, pick it up. If you leave make the bed at the hotel room before you leave. Little things like that that you can do your part to help and clean up some kind of mess. Back in the day when we had coffee pots, now we've got Keurigs and machines and stuff. So there's no really making coffee when you've taken the last cup. What about taking the last sip of milk and leaving it in the refrigerator at home? You do that? Sure, when I'm mad at someone. So think about the things that you can do that can help not be uncivil and can create more civility. One of my biggest pet peeves is when I go to the airport and somebody's got their suitcase on a seat, and that means somebody else can't sit there. Luggage does not get a seat. Put your bag on the floor in between your feet. Put it somewhere on the rack. Your bag does not need to take up someone's seat when you're waiting in a public location. What about being on time at work, or if you're late, or even at home? This is civil, helping someone respect their time. Don't assume what's acceptable in one social situation or one social context is acceptable other places. Some companies, if you're someone who's changed jobs recently, or even more to the point, if you're a supervisor at your company, I want you to recognize that every company has a different process. Some companies, I've got clients that really, really care about if you're not in your seat ready to work by 9 a.m., you're late. There is no ifs, ands, or buts. If you're not ready to start at 9, you're late. Others are like, yeah, 9, 9:30, 9:15. I just need you to get the job done. Culture is very subjective, and how you manage culture and how you support culture, whether you're a manager, an owner, or an employee, matters. So I want you to recognize that what's appropriate or civil in one location isn't in another. What do you do to overcome civility? Communication is huge. There are ways that you can screen job applicants ahead of time through a behavioral interview process, which, as a plug, I have a behavioral interview training program coming up. I think it's December I'm doing it. Love for you to attend. It's always free. I don't charge for any of those on these score sessions. So you can learn a little bit more about how to get ahead of some of these issues that are troubling you as you hire, empowering employees with resources, modeling civility and respect. Notice I highlighted that. If you can model it, that's how you start it. And of course, increase accountability, transparency, respect. We're going to talk about that. There's so many ways. These are just more tools for your toolbox on overcoming incivility. I'll also tell you, as you're going through this, if something resonates with you, I'll be available, of course, for questions. I'll stay a little bit on. If Adam will also, we can stay for a few minutes after, or you can contact me separately through my company, or go to the YouTube, go to the Google, type in, how do I overcome incivility in the workplace? You will get hundreds of thousands of YouTube videos or articles that you can read or watch. Some of these are 10 minutes. Some of these are 1 hour. Some of these are do something, find something. If you see a word or a phrase or something that you're thinking, hey, I should try that, it's all right in front of you. I mean, there is almost literally no excuse for not being able to get. I can't afford internet. Go to the library. Library offers free internet, free computers, free access. You're coming to a free training here. That's awesome. I love that you guys are here. This is really going to help you also. Positive outcomes. This is my last slide on the whole baseline of civility. Then we're going to get into some real practical examples and solutions. There are so many ways that we can list out positive outcomes. I listed 6 high-level ones, but it is proven. Again, I can't give you stats on what civility will create for lower job turnover, but you've already seen that 26% are contemplating leaving a job due to incivility. So the more civility you have, the less incivility you have, which will lead to lower job turnover. So cost avoidance or turnover avoidance, you'll have to count that as a leader, an HR leader, a supervisor, somebody that's in charge. If you're an employee contemplating leaving and you're looking at these stats, all the bad stats, the negative stats, you're going to have to look at positivity out of that is reducing the negative. And then as you continue to build, you can create your own metric in your own workplace. Well, based on the training we put in for civility and based on running through a higher degree of respect and accountability and performance management measures that lead to this accountability measurement, we've decreased turnover by 8%, or we've increased retention rates by X%. We've promoted a certain percentage of the workforce. There are ways that you can turn this into something. I do this with my clients all the time. Look at what you can avoid and then create a positive out of it. Before we get into communication, Adam, I want to take a sec to look at any questions we have, see if there's anything we can jump into, if that's okay. And I'm able to open the chat myself. I don't know if you see
Uh,
anything. Hey,
right now you got nothing. So
all
you
right,
must
let's.
be doing an excellent job.
All right, great. I don't hear echo. No echo. That's good. Let me just go back a little bit. Okay. Okay, super. Well, excellent. Feel free to throw in your thoughts and questions, and we'll cover them as we go through. Um, Civility, this is in my teaching, in my opinion, and how I operate with my clients, always starts with communication. The first thing we look at is how are we communicating? What's our communication protocol, our process? What do people think they hear? What do you think you're saying? We want to get into that. So let's talk about communication, because that's going to be a huge piece of how we get through this. One piece of communication that we are very unaware of is our nonverbal communication. And when I say unaware, we think we know what nonverbal is, and we're pretty sure how we receive nonverbal. And we think we know what we're giving out when we do nonverbal, because if I'm upset and I'm got my arms crossed and I'm scowling, okay, I'm telling you I'm upset. You ever have someone say, well, they saw my eyes, they know what I was thinking because they saw it in my eyes? Really? Nonverbal communication. I want you to think about what messages you're receiving from someone else's nonverbal and what messages you're giving from your own nonverbal. I want you to think about your eye contact, how you smile, what your posture is. If I sat back and did this training like this, where my chair was all the way back, I don't even know if you guys can even hear me. But if I did the training where my chair was all the way back, I was leaning back in my chair, I was just kind of nonchalant about the whole thing, that would have very much less impact than some enthusiastic, direct contact communication. What I do doesn't work for everyone. What you do doesn't work for everyone. When I interview candidates, I make it a point to look you in the eye. There are some people that find that intimidating. I need to know what you're thinking, and I want to give you the respect of looking in your eye. Um, I've got a friend that went out on a date. This was incredible to me. But he turned his phone upside down to show respect to his date, so that if something came up on the phone, a text or something, or a phone call, the phone would be down so it wouldn't keep lighting up. She thought he was trying to hide something. Oh, you don't want me to see what's on your phone? So this kind of nonverbal, he just turned his phone over, didn't say anything. She took that as disrespect. He meant it as respect. So understanding what vibe you're giving and what vibe you're receiving is going to be really important as you go through all of these nonverbals. There's one that's really impactful that I want to teach you about, the arms crossed. Look at the picture. That one's intentional for you all, because you hear about arms crossed typically means, or at least we're taught to believe, that it means you're hiding something, or you're closed, you're not interested in receiving what I'm giving you. Now, when you look at this picture, you don't see any of that, right? You see somebody who's relaxed, she's chill, she's having a conversation. That's her posture, arms crossed, smile, all that stuff. Recognize that what you're receiving from this and what she's giving may be two different things. You don't know. So I would encourage you, as you think about your nonverbals and you're in a conversation with someone, be cognizant of things like eye contact, hand movements. Pointing is different than, like this, or shaking your fist. Am I shaking my fist, or am I trying to make a point? These are the things that I have to be conscious of when I talk to you. When I fold my arms and I'm talking to you, I'm feeling a little bit closed, so I'm going to keep my arms open and not. Be aware of that for yourself. Nonverbal communication. One that we're not all that familiar with. We're more familiar with it than we think, but we don't know it's called paraverbal communication. Paraverbal is tone and inflection. You ever have someone say it's not what you said, but how you said it? I'm okay with all that, but I didn't like how you said it. Well, I didn't mean anything by paraverbal, tone, inflection. And I want you to listen to how I say these. I have 6, 7 counting the sentence that's on the slide now. I'm going to say 7 sentences with a different word in the next 6 sentences is italicized, and I'm going to use emphasis, and you'll hear what I'm talking about. So let's start with, I didn't know that you wanted to buy that book. That was me just reading the sentence with whatever inflection or tone you may have heard. I didn't know that you wanted to buy that book. Now I'm going to say it. I didn't know that you wanted to buy that book. I didn't know that you wanted to buy that book. I didn't know that you wanted to buy that book. I didn't know that you wanted to buy that book. I didn't know that you wanted to buy that book. I didn't know that you wanted to buy that book. So the inflection, the tone, if we were in a room together when I do this live, I call on someone from the audience and you can see that person's body language, their neck and head usually inflect at certain points when they read certain words, and their body language may change based on how they're perceiving that sentence. Recognize that your nonverbals and your paraverbals can make a difference in how you come across. There's also listening skills. You have to be careful about what you're hearing. Now, there's a whole other section, I don't have it in this training, on active listening. That's different. That's where you're participating in the conversation in a way that is appreciative to the person receiving it. Listening skills from genuine listening has to do with listening with the intent to hear, not to act. You want to show, of course, that you're listening, nod your head, but you're listening, you're hearing. One of the 7 habits of highly effective people that Stephen Covey talks about is listening with the intent to hear. So you're listening to hear, not to act, not to solve. And that's what I want you to learn about genuine listening, is you're reflecting verbal and nonverbal communication. You're also clarifying. Remember, you want to understand, you're hearing, you want to hear what they have to say. So learning how to clarify can also be helpful and important too, as you learn how to genuinely listen, which includes active listening. Genuine listening is a form of civility where you really want to hear what someone says. You're not trying to solve their problem. You're not waiting for them to finish. You can jump in with a solution. You're listening to what they have to say empathetically and with heart. Appreciative inquiry is the positive form of finding out an answer. You ever have someone who, whenever you're talking to them, has to say something like, yes, but? Well, we've tried that before, but it didn't work. So appreciative, that's not appreciative inquiry. Appreciative inquiry is yes, and. It's, I want to try something that hasn't worked before. And your response is, well, maybe we can, you want to get to it, maybe we can try it. So yes, and how do you think we do that? It's a different style of communication that if you can learn this, now if this is new to you and this is like, all right, I don't really know what he's talking about, it doesn't make sense to me. You're probably the one that does it. So I want you to take a second and go into the YouTube or the Google. And again, appreciative inquiry. I want you to go in and type in, what is appreciative inquiry? That will really help. One thing I would like, this is another tool for your toolbox. So this is one that I'm going to spend an extra second on, or an extra minute. I believe that other people can affect your behavior. You know how we say nobody can make me feel a certain way? I don't believe that's true. I believe that people can make you a certain way. The people closest to you know what buttons to push. And if they're in an uncivil manner, their head's not in it, they're thinking something different, they will be able to make you feel bad. You own that though. And what you do control is your reaction. So while some people can make you feel bad, they can't control your reaction. That is something that you and you alone control. How you respond, whether you raise your voice or not, whether you walk out of the room or not, whether you throw hands or not, whether you yell, however you respond is up to you. And I want you to recognize that you own the reaction. The behavior you own also, what you're feeling, you own, but people can make you feel that way. They can't make you react a certain way. So the next time you're feeling road ragey, nobody did that to you but you. That action may have caused you to feel a certain way. You own the reaction. You own what you do with it. And if you can learn to mature up a little bit and recognize how to own that, that will help you with civility. I also want to get into professional behavior. I want to take a second. I see a couple of notes in the chat. So let me check that with you, Adam. Shows confidence, good, or smile says it all, love it. Thank you for the inputs. I appreciate that. Adam, are you seeing any questions?
Still no questions. You're doing good.
I'll keep going. Professional behavior. You know, when I did this presentation a few years ago, when I first started it, I called it workplace etiquette. And I never really liked that phrase because it feels a little bit too condescending. Workplace etiquette, like put your napkin on your lap kind of thing. So instead, when I did some research and I found some other terms, and my best friends at ChatGPT gave me some ideas, professional behavior seemed to me to be the way that I want to present this section of the training. It includes workplace etiquette, it includes respect, and it's about what you want to do at the workplace in a way that presents civility and avoids incivility. Start with greetings. It costs you nothing to say good morning, to say hello, to say goodbye, to be pleasant with a smile. We talked about less muscles to smile, more to frown. Having a greeting. Now, there's a line that you cross with, tell me more about your day. How's your day? Well, if you don't have time for that, I want you to learn with greetings how to politely and professionally get away from that. Say, oh, I'm glad you asked. Thank you. Can I get back to you on that? I'm on my way to something. Now, that's not a lie because you could be on your way to the bathroom, to your room, to your office, to something else. Because I never want you to lie. Don't ever lie. But I do want you to learn that saying hello, good morning. Early in my career, I have another training for frontline supervisors because, little known fact is the first official or real training you get as a supervisor is 11 years into your supervision journey. Isn't that crazy? Many of us get to be supervised without any training. So one of the things I learned without any training was how to work with individuals and how to be a manager. Then I learned how to be a leader after that. I had one employee who, if you walked by her office and didn't stop to say good morning and how are the kids and answer her questions, how are the kids, what's new, how was the ball game last night, she wasn't in a good place. She had a pretty tough day. She was that person that needed to have the conversation. So you learn to either avoid her office until you're ready to have a conversation, or by Donna's office, you made sure to stop and say hello and have a conversation. I had another employee, Jess, who all she wanted to do was work. If she said good morning, that was more than she ever did. It wasn't uncivil. It was just she wasn't a good morning kind of person. She was a get to work kind of person. So understanding who your people are and who you're working with will help you with greetings and with being civil. Excuse me, saying good morning, saying hello, saying goodbye, that doesn't cost you anything. Self-awareness is something that many of us think we have, but we don't. The irony of self-awareness is that if you're not self-aware, you don't have enough self-awareness to know that you're not self-aware. If you're someone who thinks, I have a high degree of self-awareness, you may want to look up self-awareness because self-awareness includes humility. And most people that, if you are truly self-aware, you are aware enough of being self-aware that you know that you need to be more self-aware. It's a complex, very deep, empathetic, and emotionally intelligent conversation that you'll have to have at some point with yourself and with the ChatGPT and with the Google. Simon Sinek, Brene Brown, Sheryl Sandberg are three very, very influential folks on self-awareness and workplace influencing that can help you to learn about that. But I would encourage you as part of your journey to get deeper on self-awareness. It will help you. Involvement is something that we also, as we think about civility, being involved, I will tell you the summary of involvement, you being on this call or listening to this recording is involvement. Being a part of this training, being a part of this learning, being a part of all of this is a level of involvement that will help you in your civility learning and training, just getting this input, hearing it, getting a tool for your toolbox, having this conversation with coworkers or yourself or a significant other will help you as you continue your journey. I also want you to learn how to create an inclusive workplace. That'll really help you also in your walk with civility or avoiding incivility. And you don't have to be a manager or a leader to do this. Remember when I talked to you before about the listening, about inclusive listening and hearing what somebody has to say? Active listening is part of that. Being aware that if someone has something to say, maybe it costs you 45 seconds to stop what you're doing and have someone share something with you that's on their heart. That doesn't cost you anything. Now, if you're in the middle of something, learn to say, I really want to have this conversation, but I can't right now. I have to get this project done. Can we talk later today at 4? Can we talk on Friday at 2? Whatever it is, try to get back. Many times there's no further conversation. They're done, just had something to say at the moment. They'll find somebody else. But it's also a way to be civil and say, I hear you, I value you. Can we talk later? These are some traits. You can come back to this later, but I listed 7 traits that I found for an inclusive leader. Remember, again, you don't have to be a leader to be a leader. You don't have to manage people to be a leader. We can all be leaders in our own way. You can be an individual contributor and still lead by example by showing up on time. So some of these things aren't necessarily that I listed for empathy and patience and humility. You don't have to be a manager of people to have all that. You can do that by being just you. This slide is intentionally here. I'm not interested in having a political conversation. In my world of human resources, we focus on policies, not politics, but the term politically correct still stands. You want to say server instead of waiter or waitress. You want to say flight attendant instead of stewardess, those types of things. I also want to encourage you to stop taking such a hard stance on pronouns. If someone wants to be called George instead of Georgette, what do you care? What is that really changing for you? Now, of course, that's an extreme. But what about I'm Alan, not Al? So if you call me Al and I say I prefer to be called Alan, and you continue to call me Al, is that respectful? Of course not. I've asked you to call me Alan. Why is that any different than someone asking you to call them one name and not another, as long as it's legit and standard and regular? I will tell you, I had a client once that put out, this is back a few years ago when pronouns were much more part of the HR process, where they said, what do you want us to call you? And this new hire said, call me the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And they called me and said, do I really have to do that? And I said, well, you put it out there. So respect for this individual would be calling them that. But no, you don't have to. It's not a protected class to call someone that. That's not something that has to do with gender specific pronouns or anything that the laws were requiring at the time. So you want to be careful about how you ask for it, but I would like to encourage you to watch what you're really guarding. If someone would like to be called he or him or they or them, how does it really affect you? So just be, and we're not talking about allyship here. We're talking about respect for other people's wishes. Speaking of respect, I want you to learn how to respect other people and their time and space. Proactive listening, respecting property, the right to beliefs, coworkers' time. Remember the nonverbals and the paraverbals. Hey, Alan, you got a sec? And I'm down here writing. Sure, what's up? You need to, I'm going to respect your time, but respect the fact that you're interrupting me doing something. Recognize that from my nonverbals and paraverbals and make it short and brief. There are some also real basic things. If you borrow someone's stapler in the office, put it back. If you open a door, close it. Things like that that you can do to respect other people's space. And with that, I want to address this for you also. I'm a big believer with my clients and when I teach and what I train, owed respect versus earned respect. We have this society where you have to earn my respect. Nothing is owed, nothing is given for granted. You have to earn it. I would encourage you, if you're one of those folks right now that's feeling disrespected in the workplace, or something we've covered so far has given you an inkling of, we've got an uncivil workplace. I wonder if I'm part of it. I want you to stop where you are right now. And if you're in a room of other people, I don't know if you really need to look around at each other. That could be a little bit awkward, but I do want you to just take a second and recognize, okay, I work with Alan and I don't really respect him because he never shows up on time. He doesn't do his full job, whatever reasons you have that are true to you for your lack of respect for the other person, whether it's in the room now or a family member or somebody else in a different part of the country that you have to work with once a week, you're on a team meeting, whatever it is. I want you to stop and start over. I want you to recognize that in this very moment where we are now, there are, I think, what, Adam, 61, I see 60, it's fluctuating, but let's say we have 60 participants on this call, plus whoever else is listening to this later. By virtue of us sharing this space here on the civility training, we owe each other respect. You didn't earn any respect from me for being on time, for giving you the best presentation I can in this moment. I'm trying my best. I hope it resonates with you. And if it doesn't, I'm sorry. Hopefully it does. And hopefully you get a tool. I'm also going to do my very level best to wrap up at 1, which is what we're talking about. I owe you these very basic levels of respect. You didn't earn that for me at all. You owe me a certain base respect from being on this call together. That's all I'm asking. The people you work with, you owe them respect for no other reason than you were all hired into this company. No, there was an acquired person or that team I inherited. I don't care. You're in the same place at the same time for presumably the same reason. Start over, right? Remember, you don't have civility for someone, or you're feeling like there's a lack of civility. Start over. You owe respect for that one reason. Now, it's that person's opportunity to lose respect. It's also that person's opportunity to gain more respect. But this is a great tool for your toolbox. If you're finding yourself lost, you're either acting in an uncivil manner or being treated with incivility, or vice versa. You feel uncivil towards someone, or you're treating someone with incivility. Stop and say, I owe respect for this reason. You will see a huge change in how you operate and how you work. Last slide here for respect, and then we'll get, or for professional, for etiquette, and then we'll go into conflict resolution. Remember the space and boundaries. Gosh, for anyone that remembers this long ago, there was an old television show called WKRP in Cincinnati. And one of their actors, or the characters, was Les Nessman, who had a cubicle, and he would put tape around his cube that looked like a door. And he required people to respect his space as if it were an office. They need to knock on the cube and before they come in and get recognized. That was a joke at the time, and it was a parody and a comedy. But isn't that true? Shouldn't we respect other people's spaces? If you go into someone's cube, instead of just walking in and sitting down, maybe knock on the door. Or if there is a door closed, knock before you open. If you're in a shared facility, that's not your one space. You don't spread out everywhere. So think about space and boundaries for yourself, for the people, how you can look at that. I put 6 tools in here for you to ensure communication is clear, avoid sensitive topics, don't eavesdrop, things that hopefully will help you get through this as well. All right, conflict resolution, we'll touch on this. And then, but first I want to see chat and Q&A.
Lots of them.
All right, super. We have to deal with the client disrespectful. You mentioned that we should not respond with disrespectful or rudely, even if it is done to us. You know, I regularly stated my boundaries. Yep. Internal. These things. How can this be addressed when dealing with a key client? So this is a pretty typical type of question is, how do I still say nice to someone who's not nice to me? And especially when my job might depend on it. I gave you some tools here in the training, and some of this might be very specific to your situation. In general, one of the things I touched on this earlier, but we didn't get deep. One of my favorite tools for your toolbox is assume good intent. In general, people do not wake up in the morning thinking about how to ruin your day. I do grant you that there are some evil people in the world and some very non-supportive people, and sometimes people do go out of their way to make your day hard because they feel they were wronged first. I want you to assume good intent. People are not going out of their way to make things hard for you. You might think they are, but if you have that positive, that will keep you focused on that. And then there's a couple of more points. I think I want to take one more question if there is one. All right, I see a few here. Adam, if it's okay with you, I'm going to hit conflict resolution. I want to get through these slides. These are good teaching slides.
Sure.
Then I want to flip through the how to build a plan, because I wrote it. Sometimes I don't get to the last section like in today with all the conversation. So it'll be in the slides for whoever's listening to this later. I'll touch on it, then I'll come back to questions for anyone who wants to stay on the line. And if there's a way to handle this directly, we will.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Conflict resolution. I want to start with the concept that conflict is not always negative. Conflict is not always violent. Conflict is absolutely inevitable, and anyone can experience conflict. What I want you to look at is what conflict can be. At its very core, we've heard this, I mean, many of us have heard it said this way, but diamonds come from coal through conflict. Coal becomes diamonds through years and years and years and years of sitting in the cave or whatever it is, it's conflict. So conflict can have good results, or conflict can be out of good. It could be whose client is this, or where should we go for lunch, or schedule changes, which can be positive or negative. What I want you to learn today, and what I'm going to try to teach you in the next few minutes, is how to avoid or how to handle negative conflict. Negative conflict oftentimes turns into confrontation. So it's not literally avoiding conflict, it's avoiding confrontation. But we avoid confrontation by avoiding conflict. So I'm going to give you some tools here that hopefully help, and you can take these with you. We can talk about them after also. So I do want to commit, I want to keep our 1 o'clock time in case anybody needs to go. Again, I'll stay on longer if we have more questions. I put 8 points down here for handling conflict. My favorite is assume good intent. The more you assume, ASS, you, and me. So you got to be careful about assuming good intent. But I want you to think about there's ways to find the good in it. Remember about owed and earned respect. You earned my respect by being here. So we'll start at a single point. So these are 8 quick tools on how to handle conflict. Here's an old study from 1972. We never have time to get into this on my trainings, but I put it in here because I want you to have reference to it. Thomas and Kilman taught styles of conflict management back in 1972. There are 5 that they identified that I would encourage you on your own time, get deeper at. Learn to collaborate, learn to compete, learn to compromise, learn to accommodate, learn to avoid. All of these have a place. The most frequent is collaborating, and the least frequent is avoiding. But avoidance of a conflict has its place, and I want you to learn how to do that. I also want you to learn how to collaborate. Those things are very important. Constructive disagreement is the concept of agreeing to disagree agreeably. We're allowed to disagree, but how do we do it positively? Ask questions. Remember, it's not personal. Remember that disagreement is normal and effective. There will always be more than one way to do something. There's more than one way around the mountain, and there's more than one right way around the mountain. So figuring out how to get there together is what's really the most helpful and positive. A tool you can use if you've never learned how to examine a root cause, there's this thing you learn in the Six Sigma and manufacturing plant training called the 5 whys, WHY. Ask the question why or how come 5 times. I'm not having a good day. Why? Because Alan yelled at me. Why? Because I was late to work. Why? Because I was stuck in traffic. Why? Because I didn't get up in time. So if you ask the question why enough times, you walk yourself through the process to the root cause, and that's something you can fix or at least support. Something that's also often overlooked is breathing. Take a second, learn some mental health processes. Again, the Google and YouTube are very helpful. One of my favorites is what we call box breathing. You breathe in for 5 seconds, you hold it for 5 or a count of 5, you hold it for a count of 5, you breathe out for a count of 5, and you pause for a count of 5. Do that 2 or 3 times. That's a minute. That's it, right? 20 seconds times 3 is a minute, and you're usually at a much calmer place. But any of these things can help as you walk through coping mechanism. The agreement frame goes back to what I talked to you about before about agreeing to disagree agreeably. Say things positively. I mentioned to you before about saying yes, but versus yes, and. If you started today, next time you find yourself ready to say but, say and. Instead of using the word but, use the word and. You'll see it change your mindset and your approach pretty well. You've heard the expression, potentially, if you're into sports at all, hate the game, not the player. That's what this means. It's not about the person, it's about the behavior. Assume good intent. How can I help? What's up? Don't attack them. Remember, hate the game, not the player. I don't like what you said to me. What you said to me was offensive is different than you seem like you're in a bad mood. So how do you address the situation? You attack the situation, the problem, not the person. What some people do forget to do is forgive. We've heard it said, and I think we can all agree that not forgiving someone hurts the person that's holding on to the lack of forgiveness much, much more than the person that needs to be forgiven. Many times the person that you think wronged you, that you haven't forgiven, has already moved on. They're not holding on to your lack of forgiveness. They're holding on to whatever they're holding on to. So learning to forgive will free your heart, free your soul, it'll free your mind, and it'll allow you to be more civil also. You'll see it if you could practice it. The next few slides are implementing the plan. I'm going to touch on this and then go into the questions. So anybody who wants to stay on can stay on if you have more questions also. But I wrote this so that you can implement this on your own just through these slides. First, create a needs analysis. Find out what you really need. Don't solve a problem that's not a problem. So find out what the problem is first, and I gave you a whole bunch of ways to do that. Then you want to find a core group. I encourage you, when you create your core group that's going to try to solve the problem, try to find someone that is a naysayer. Find someone that doesn't agree that there's a problem. Bring someone on that is anti-solution, because that will help you get into what the real reasons are and how, because that's not the only person, they're just the loudest. So the more people on the team that are part of the broad solution from different spectrums of concern and level, that will help you. Defining unacceptable behavior. If you don't know what good looks like, you'll never solve for what bad is. So defining what is not okay will help you through this plan. Your next step is, what are the consequences? So after you've defined unacceptable behavior, what are the consequences for unacceptable behavior? If being late is not okay, what happens if you are late? So that's what I want you to go through. I put the notes there too for you. Then once you have all those data points, you want to write the policy, whether you hire an HR professional or a lawyer, or if you have the tools internally to write your policy, great. I want you to think about having someone else review it also outside of your core, because that'll help pick out some of the things that haven't been really identified. And then you need an awareness campaign. You have to put it out there, your internal chats and social media. You have to get people out there, because you're going to have rewrites and you want feedback and input. So launch an awareness campaign. Figure out with that awareness campaign how to change attitudes, because you will have the naysayers. This is stupid. This is a waste of my time. This isn't working. Okay, tell me why. Go back to your first parts about surveys and questions. Then set your systems in place. What does that look like? What is the process? When do you review stuff? Make sure you set up training programs for your people. If you just put it out there, you're not teaching anybody how to be civil or what good looks like. If you're just putting it on a piece of paper, that's not going to help you get to the end, which is why we have not just slides, but also verbal communication. And if we're in person, you see all the moving around stuff. So having a training program. And then lastly, there's a team contribution. I want you to remember, this is all tying it together. It starts with you. Those of you that are listening to the sound of my voice right now, it starts with you. Respect and civility are contagious. It's everyone working together. It starts with you. And here's my contact. I'm going to stay on for as long as, Adam, you're willing to stay on, if we want to address some questions. But if you wanted to contact me, here's my phone and email, and you can QR code, and I'll send you a PDF of the presentation. I also have a quick reference guide I'll send you. So thank you, everybody, for your time.
Yeah, you can stick around if you want. That's fine.
Okay, super. All righty. So let me see what I got. Oh, Beth, you are wise. That is great advice. Wonderful. You are, Beth. How do you view individuals that opt to not be on video? Arguably not civility, maybe not the case. It does personally bother me. We have to start with, are we talking personal or business? If we talk about business, if you have a rule or a policy or process that people need to be on video, it's not a civility thing, it's a performance issue. And I think that you have to address that in the organization as a policy. If you are personally offended that people aren't on video, this is where, and forgive me, I'm not going to say this person's name, of course. I don't know if everybody can see it in the chat, but whether it's you or someone else, remember what I said about nudging that person next to you with your elbow in their ribs, and I want you to start with you. That is a you issue. I want you to recognize that, and I hope that didn't come out as harshly as it may have, but it's a fact. I want you all to recognize that if you are upset over someone else doing something that's not at you, it's a thing that they're doing, and you've asked them to be on video and they've said no, I don't think that's an incivility issue. I think that's a you recognizing that everybody's different. I mean, and I want you to also flip the script. Maybe they're offended that you're on video and they're not. Maybe they would prefer that you weren't on video. So if it's video or if it's shaking hands, gosh, I was at a conference this week, and I can't tell you how many different ways that we greet. There were over 2,000 people at this conference, and I must have either shake hands or fist bumped or elbow bumped or nodded or waved to half those people. And there was no standard. And how many times did somebody put a fist bump out that I put my hand out to shake, or vice versa? Or I nodded. There was one time I nodded across the room. I was on my way to a meeting. I nodded across the room, and this person came over all the way across the hallway to give me a hug, which was lovely. I loved it. It was awesome. And those are very cool things. But what if I didn't want a hug? Or what if I couldn't talk? Or what if there was something else going on? So you have to be careful about how you perceive what people think or feel and how you react to that. Remember, you choose your own reactions. I think being open to opting out of video is inclusive to those with disabilities. Sure, that's what I mean. There's a way that you can recognize if it's for sure, if you're supposed to be on video and you're not, that's an organizational issue that may be handled through an accommodation request through a disability, or whether it's a performance issue because you need to be. That's a separate conversation. In general, though, I want you to really, again, take a second to say, why does that bother me? And if you can identify that it's personal or something else, that'll help you determine what are these tools I gave you that might be helpful to you as you go through it. Thank you for that. And thank you for the feedback on that last point about great info. Thank you. You're welcome. I'm glad this was helpful to you. I've got a few in the Q&A too I'm looking at, Adam. This is great. So I'm just going to stay on. I have a call at 1:30 that I'll have to leave for, but we can stay on for as long as we can. And Adam, you'll just have to say, Alan, time to go. All right. What steps would you take when your immediate supervisor embarrassed you in front of your peers? Very uncivil. Example, she pointed her finger at me and said, I was not speaking to you, and then supervisor believes they did nothing wrong. That's an uncivil act for sure, and that made you feel less than, and that's not a great way to lead or manage on their side. There are probably other sides, because I'm sure they had a different view of that at some level. Most managers and most employees don't see eye to eye when it comes to these acts of incivility. This is something that if you have an HR department inside your organization, I would encourage you to have that conversation and get some feedback internally, because this is subjective. An HR department or that company's culture and process may be very dogmatic and may be very micromanagement. Neither of those things are illegal. However, it makes you feel uncomfortable. And if you feel like you're being bullied, and then we get into a whole harassment thing, which this is not, but I want you to recognize that just feeling like you're not being taken at face value, that's uncivil. And I think that in those cases, you just have to take a moment and recognize that some people have bad days. You didn't do anything wrong, or at least not as far as you're aware. And maybe you did and you don't know. So having that conversation with someone else about he said, she said, what one side said to the other in any of these situations can help you determine what you can do. Remember, you control your controllables. You control your reactions. So if someone else is mean or just not nice to you, how do you feel about that and how do you react to that? It's a conversation maybe with that person or with someone else, or recognizing what your part in it was. Maybe I shouldn't have interrupted the conversation, there are all kinds of different moves. But I think that the first thing I would do is I'd take account of what occurred, why it occurred, what I could have done differently. And if I'm convinced I could have done differently, I would say, okay, is there something that they could have done differently? Or maybe they were having a bad day. And if it happens again, I'd probably take it up to a higher level supervisor. Do you really think the workplaces where employees who are raised without any manners will finally learn a few and behave correctly? That's funny. I'm running a business, not a charm school. Good. One of our staff was autistic, and if we asked her to make eye contact or whatever, we'd probably get sued. Okay, good. So you're recognizing that one tool for one person may not work for the same person. So what you'll have to do in the case where someone isn't comfortable making eye contact, in your case, you have someone with autism, but it could just be somebody who's introverted and doesn't like to have eye contact. Okay, so your tools that would be working for you and your organization might be from a different area or a different process. So I love that you're recognizing that some tool might work for one and not for other. You're exactly right. So do people learn manners at work? No, but civility carries itself from work to home and from home to work. So if I'm able to reach one person today that takes a little bit more civility away with them and it impacts their home or work, awesome. That's what we're here for, because all of these trainings can be mutual. And I would also say, if you're the owner of a company and you're recognizing that there is some level of incivility that needs to be fixed, I would start right there with you. What is it that you're doing every day at the workplace that creates some level of awareness for other people of what civility looks like? Because as a leader, especially a company owner, people are looking to you to learn more about what good is. And then the next level down, they're looking at their immediate supervisor. Sometimes they're looking at home. Sometimes for me as a teacher, it's about how you lead and what people are taking away from it. Great question. Thank you. With respect to being one of the company's core values, how should a company handle high-profile employees whose personal lives become public and may affect the company's reputation, like Coldplay concert. What strategies suggest to protect the workplace culture and company image while upholding this value? Respect being one of the company's core values. How should a company handle high-profile employees' personal lives? I'm going to say I can't answer that on this call. This is a much deeper conversation. I think that in general, you have to understand what good looks like for your organization. Some companies, that whole Coldplay thing with what was it, Astronomer, I think was the company, some companies wouldn't care. Do you remember at the very, very beginning of the training when I showed you that the screenshots from the Green Bay Packer Philadelphia Eagle issue with that one guy that was yelling at the one older male that was yelling at the one younger female? You didn't see her, of course. I didn't put her in the picture. But the owner of that company, while the employee was terminated, which was the right thing to do, I think most of us would probably agree, the owner of the company also at a level defended the employee's actions and said, while I don't condone what the employee did, I don't think we should judge one person on one act, which is a form of bias, which I also teach on what we call the Kodak moment. We see one small snapshot of somebody. Now, in this case, that was severe and that was awful. And that person needed to lose their job for that act of incivility, which created a terrible hostile environment. But the company in general has a stance that one bad moment doesn't make for a bad person or a bad issue. I can tell you, I worked for a company. I was an HR generalist at an organization. I had this job for about 2 years. And the head of that HR department, my big boss, his opinion was if you're a longtime employee, let's say more than 10 years of employment at the company, and this was one of those longstanding companies where we had employees that, I mean, they were there for generations, right? The grandpa and or the grandparent and the parent and the child, and it was just that kind of thing. So if you were there for any extended period of time, you were not judged by 1 year, a whole year of bad performance. So if you had a bad performance review for 1 year, that was 1 year. If it were 2 years, now we're seeing a trend, 3 years for sure. And we never really let it get that long, but 1 year of bad performance and 9 years of good performance, those 9 years overpowered the one. That was a philosophy of that company. Other companies that I've supported would say 1 year and you're out. So it's a culture thing. But I would love to hear from you. Whoever asked this Coldplay question, we can talk offline about that. Do you have words relating to managing incivility in a family business? Different dynamics play out, and a father may be rough drill sergeant type where a child may feel their only plans to leave the business. Thoughts when openly pointing to tone, word choice have no effect. I have 2 clients. Well, over my career, I've had many, but currently have several clients that are family businesses. And in my experience with family businesses, it is absolutely one of the toughest situations to deal with because you take it home with you. In many cases, the families agree that they're not going to talk about business at home, but sometimes you have to talk about business at home. They say we're not going to talk about home at business. Sometimes you do. You have to have boundaries and set up rules around what is okay and not okay in the workplace. I also would tell you that some people are those people, and there was a question before about will people change? I don't know. Will they? Leopards don't change spots. Past behavior is the best indicator of future performance. But yes, people can change. I know that they can. I know that they can because I teach this training, and I have people come up to me later and say, "Thank you for sharing that one bullet, whatever it is. I never thought about assume good intent. That has changed my mindset." And this one person that I thought was out to get me, now that I'm looking at them differently, I realize that was me being defensive. I've had those conversations multiple times. So can people change? Sure. We're talking about a family dynamic. My advice is we have to set boundaries and ground rules, have a policy, a corporate policy in place, a handbook that talks about what is okay and not okay, and a second handbook for just the family that talks about what you can and can't talk about at work and how you can address each other. I think having that open conversation, most of the time people will not change though, and you have to just accept that that's the family business and it is what it is, which is sometimes very difficult to do. I'm curious if you suggest avoiding talks about incivility during job interviews and or during interviews with employees perhaps only address when the topic comes up. This is pretty subjective also. Having a conversation about incivility during a job interview, usually I would recommend in a case like this that we just want to wait until it comes up, but somebody has to bring it up. So if you're interviewing and the candidate brings it up or vice versa, it just depends on the context. If you're asking a question like, tell me about how you deal with incivility in the workplace at your place of employment, I don't think that's an unfair question. I mean, you want to hear how they address it. We don't have incivility in the workplace. Are you going to press that? Well, really? Everybody says good morning and thank you. Now you're expressing your definition of civility on someone else, which is the reaction piece and the assuming good intent piece. So you do have to be careful. I think asking a general question about give me an example of what incivility looks like at this workplace, whether it's real or not. I just want to get a feel for how you think about conduct. I don't think that's inappropriate. I wouldn't mind it if I were interviewing. If I were a candidate, I do coach my job seekers sometimes to ask a question. If they've heard, if there's a company like if you're, I hate to pick on Coldplay and astronomer, but if you were going to interview for astronomer or a company otherwise that has been in the news about some level of incivility, there's nothing wrong with asking. I did read about the situation where there was some uncomfortable scenario. Can you tell me more about how that's handled? I think that's a fair question. How do you view individuals? That question about this video is in there. Could the speaker or moderator kindly take a second per question to, I don't know what this word is, whoever wrote this. Could the speaker or moderator kindly take a second per question to AMRK them as answered live? Oh, mark them as answered live. Gotcha. Are we doing that? Okay, fair. Answer live. Okay, so that means it's turned off. That's nice. Really helps organization to know if our question was answered when we step away for a call, bathroom, answer door, among other reasons. Okay, fair. Let me do that, y'all. If you don't mind giving me another, I want to be civil in my response and answer a question in a way that doesn't cost me anything other than a few seconds of time. Answer live. And I think these questions are saved at some point. So, okay. Okay. I think I can press done too. Done. Oh, that's good. I can do done too. Now they're off. I hope this is helping whoever asked the question and others. And now that I'm looking at these questions in its entirety, I could see where that would be quite helpful. So I'm going to answer live and done. Thank you. And this is the last question I'm seeing, Adam, unless you see more. Can you speak to difficult job? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
You're good.
Others? Okay, very good. Can you speak to difficult job categories, perhaps consulting is the best example, when temp workers are completing gig work for days or weeks and they interact with a variety of stakeholders, construction, public agency, public, etc. Client sentiments are likely top concern. I've been told that the job category is like being a pawn, grievances looking for a cause or a frequent ambient portion of the atmosphere. Do you suggest trying to engage close colleagues about these circumstances on occasion, or perhaps just always understanding this in context privately, developing strategic tools? So I'm not sure I fully understand the question. So let me take it just a little bit by little bit, and then we do have to wrap up. It's almost 1:20, and I need to get ready for my next call too. But I appreciate all of you also. I mean, I got a boatload of you stayed on for all of this, so I appreciate all of that. Thank you so much. Yeah, you're welcome. No problem. Can you speak difficult job cards? So first, remember that a temp employee is not an employee of yours. A temp employee is a contract worker that is employed at a different firm, whether that's a third-party firm that supplies temporary workers to your workplace or an independent contractor, which means you are not allowed to performance manage them. That's cross-pollination, and it becomes a Department of Labor and tax issue potentially, not always, not every time, not fully, but anyway, just be aware of that. So I would usually default to the latter, to just always understanding this context privately and developing strategic tools for the future. In my experience, my preference is when someone is acting in an uncivil manner, you want to do your best to address it directly, but not as a performance issue, at least initially. Say, at this client site, they prefer that we bring our own coffee. Let's just say that'll use that as an example. That just came to me also. We had recently some renovations done on my house, and I was talking to the folks doing it, and they had just come from another job site where that homeowner said, you're not allowed to use my bathroom. You're not allowed to take my water. You must bring your own, and I don't want any of your food or drink in my house. Now, for me, that seems awfully unproductive. Doesn't make that previous homeowner wrong. That's how they manage their household. That's their corporate culture. My culture is you're in my house, you're a guest. If you need to use, even if I'm paying you to do work, if you're in my house, that's how I was raised, that's how I look at it. So if you need to use the restroom, use the restroom. You want to bring your lunch in, just there's the refrigerator. I have room for you. I have bottles of water. I actually go out and get water bottles for my folks. That's the kind of thing that we do in my household. Me and my wife have built our lives around just trying to be, because we control our controllables. We can't be nice and friendly and everyone. We can't afford it, nor do we have time to, but when we can, we are. If you have someone that's not performing well on the job in this capacity, and the client, it's important to you for the client delivery, you've got to have that conversation, not as a performance measure, but as a rule of engagement. At this client, this is how we act. And if the gig worker or temp worker isn't solving that, isn't doing it properly, you have to go to that person's employer and talk to them. If it's a gig worker, independent contractor, that's of course that person directly. If it's a third-party temp worker, you have to go to that organization that's hiring them. So I hope I answered that question, not just for this one question, but also in general. And if there's any other questions, if you have more, feel free to reach out, or I mean, I'm trying to be here for you. And if you don't mind, I just love seeing these comments. I really appreciate it. I got a lot of thank yous in here, but especially I think this was one of the answers I gave earlier, which could have been controversial. And I appreciate the fact that you appreciated the answer and it was helpful. So I appreciate far exceeded what I even thought I was expecting. Thank you very much for that feedback. And, I do like positive feedback. I also like constructive feedback. If there's something in here that you thought wasn't clear or didn't make sense, or you wanted to hear more of that maybe you wished I had spent more time on, time is time. But I love hearing that stuff because I'm always trying to customize my trainings for my audience. So thank you very much for joining. Adam, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, terrific. Thanks everyone for sticking around. Appreciate that. Did a great job. We might have to, Alan, have you do 90-minute sessions rather than 60. So we might have to talk
Thank
to
you.
the powers that be in order to get all your questions answered. I know HR is a tricky one, so I appreciate your time today. I appreciate everybody joining us today, and I will see you guys in the next one. So have yourself a great afternoon.
Thank you.